Redirection techniques today. And I might go through some of this fairly quickly because I want to leave at least 5 minutes towards the end if there's anything specific that you all want to talk about or have questions about. I want to make sure that we have time for that. But I have this picture of the brain, and we've used this picture all the time. I just kind of want to start out with this for us to take a deep breath, because when we're talking about redirection techniques or strategies, it usually means because we're having to redirect them away from something that's dangerous or risky, or somebody. We need to redirect them away from another person or a situation or from the car or from leaving the door. It's something like that. So I want us to just remember that our loved ones are living with a brain failure. What they are doing, they're not giving you a hard time, they are having a hard time. And they are doing the best they can with what abilities they still have left. So just kind of looking at this brain and knowing, it's a progression, but they're working and doing the best thing they can with what they have left. So as the disease progresses, how we redirect them, it might change as well. Our strategies are going to change as well. But we all communicate. We all use our words, our body language, our actions, reactions to things, decisions we make. This is how we communicate. It's not just the words that we have. We use all of that stuff. With dementia, the words are one of the first thing that kind of starts to be compromised with this disease commonly. Typically, they're having a hard time finding their words and a hard time processing our words. But luckily, that's not the only thing we use to communicate. As a matter of fact, our words are a very small part of what we use to communicate. But we have that body language and our behaviors, essentially, right? So how we act or conduct ourselves, especially towards another person, is a behavior. When we have dementia and we're starting to use the word behavior, usually it's in a negative connotation. But just to reiterate, behaviors are just a form of communication, okay? And again, they are coping with and reacting to a situation or a person the best way they can with the abilities they still have, and in that moment too. Because it might be they're coping better in the morning as opposed to the afternoon. Okay. So the disease is taking away their means to communicate with words, for them to communicate and also to understand language, but also to understand their environment and what's going on around them. How to express themselves with their emotions. The emotions will never go away for somebody with dementia. Just much like their need to communicate will never go away. It's just how they're able to communicate, and they're not as in control of their emotions. That's what's changing with the disease. So we've got to be able to adapt and change with those changes as well. And how we respond to them can make the situation better or worse. So talking about redirection, people with dementia are very, very good at living in the moment. So they can have one thought at a time. And usually if we can redirect them or distract them away with another thought or an activity or a change in the environment, we can eliminate what was upsetting to them at the beginning, or they can essentially forget what they were upset about or what they were trying to do that was dangerous. In redirection techniques, they're kind of a short-term strategy. Because we're going to talk more in depth about different strategies, but also understand that we might have to continue to do that redirection strategy a few times throughout the day, if not more than that. So it's a short-term thing, and we got to figure out what works for them. But it is a strategy to distract them away from what they're upset about or whatever what's possibly dangerous or risky, long enough for them to forget what they were upset about or what they were trying to do that was dangerous. And changing the environment is one of those. We're going to talk about therapeutic stories and the importance and how to use those. We'll talk about more ways to distract. Some prevention things too. Prevention is, we can prevent something from happening, that's even better. We'll talk about how to take care of ourselves and how our responses, like I said, can make the situation better or worse. But let's talk about being aware of possible risk factors that will increase unwanted behaviors or things that we might need to redirect them away from. It's not on here, but I will say there are times where your loved one will do something that's odd or out of character, or you don't like the way they're doing it because it doesn't look like them, or it's not the way they've always done it. But those things, we don't need to redirect them away from everything or correct them about everything. We're really talking about if it's unwanted or it's risky or it's dangerous, then we'll need to step in and redirect. But if they seem to be doing okay, it just looks odd, then let's let them be. Because to them, what they're doing is probably pretty normal and it makes sense to them, okay? But knowing that a change in the environment can cause an unwanted behavior, some more agitation. And this is anywhere from a move to being in the doctor's office or the pharmacy line, seeing people in masks all the time. You know, now they might be used to it, but our environment changes with the holidays, just more people in the home maybe, or just decorations are up. So anything like that. Undiagnosed pain, if they're not able to verbally tell you, hey, my tooth hurts, but they can act out in a way they're telling you something, right? Or they have another physical problem or another illness that they're living with that maybe that's not being managed, or they're having a flare up of arthritis, or they're having a urinary tract infection. They can cause some issues. If they're bored, restless, or they're lonely, feel isolated, or if they have a negative approach from somebody else, or a hurried approach, or an impatient approach from somebody else. And then as the day goes on, they can tend to become more tired, more restless, more agitated later in the afternoon. Other things to be aware of. And when we're aware of them, we can be a little bit preemptive for this. Being overstimulated. This is too much noise, too many people in the room, too many lights on, or not enough lights on. Environmental visual triggers. So if you're seeing something in the environment that might trigger you to leave. I just think about the house I grew up in. We always left shoes by the door. And that's just kind of what we did. And we also had the place by the door where you put your wallet and your keys. So that can be a trigger. You see that stuff by the door. Oh, I need to get my shoes on and grab my keys and head out somewhere. When I don't need mom driving away without anybody knowing where she's going. So thinking things like that. Just communication difficulties and the frustration that can come along with that, being able to express themselves, but also understanding what's going on. And mirroring other people's moods. That it's an emotional contagion. If they can see it, they generally mirror it or mimic it. Misinterpreting what's being done or what's being said. The example here is you're helping them get ready for the shower. So you're helping them get their clothes off, get prepared for that, and they've misunderstood that as a sexual invitation. Just misunderstandings, right? Being treated like a child really can increase frustration, agitation, and possibly even the need to rebel against whatever you're asking them to do. Not as in control of their emotions. They're being asked something that's too complex for them. It's too difficult. And then there's just the desire to leave and go home, meet former obligations. If they're regressing in time, and now, if go to work all the time, I need to get to work. I'm an important person. I got to go. People are relying on me. I got to go do stuff. And if that's the time that they're living in and what they're remembering, then we can possibly have some things we need to redirect them away from. So having a routine put in place will be huge. Routine. And this is you're getting up around the same time, your activities are around the same time, meals, same time. You don't have to be militant about the time, but it's around the same time of day. And there really is a security and a familiarity and safety to having that routine. And we all do better on a routine. There's less occurrence for an unwanted behavior, less occurrence for something that surprises them or gets them out of this structure that's very helpful for them. And setting up the environment to make sure that it is calm and relaxing. But you also want to make sure it's familiar and friendly and easy to navigate. So even from the early stages all the way up to the later stages, I want it to be an environment that's calm, so there's not too much overstimulation, but it's a familiar, the pictures that are hung are familiar. Maybe the old chair in the corner that you've always wanted to get rid of, you keep for right now because that's familiar and there's a sentiment to that chair, right? You have it's set up in a way that's easy to manage, easy to navigate. And that can be anywhere from the early stages. My mom always went in and loved to make coffee and have coffee. So we have the coffee stuff out so she knows what to do with it. And that was her abilities at the time. As the disease progressed, we needed to change that a little bit. Still had coffee, but we had it made for her. So all she had to do was pour it in her mug. But it was there and it was functional for her where her abilities were at. And also making sure that they have their own space. We all have our own space within our home that it's a space we want to go to. It might be a bedroom, it might be an outdoor patio, it might be just a corner in the living room. I don't know, but it's my favorite chair. This is where I go and read and do my stuff. It's my private space. And we want to make sure our loved ones have that space as well, and that they can go to calm down if they need to, but it's just their space. We all have that. And giving repeated reassurances and encouragements just throughout the day. And that really helps build a trusting relationship between you and your loved one. Making sure that they're getting good quality sleep, they're eating well, they're getting good exercise, but they're also engaged in purposeful and familiar activities. So they have a purpose every day. They're doing these things that they're needed, and they're contributing to a larger thing. Staying up to date on their doctor's visits, make sure they're feeling okay. This includes the eye doctor, the primary care physician, the dentist, any specialist that they may see. And then watch what they're trying to tell you. What are their body language? What are their cues of agitation and frustration? And we'll talk a little bit more about this here in a few minutes. But if you start to see their body language changing or starting to ramp up or get more agitated, it's easier to step in when you see that and kind of take care of it while it's not as big of a deal as if we just kind of wait and think, maybe if we don't do anything, it'll go away. That may happen, but it may just continue to escalate and get bigger and bigger. And now we have to deal with the larger thing. So some nonverbal strategies. And last week, Holly talked about validation and compassionate communication, and she really covered this. Really in depth. So I'm just going to go through this quickly because it's important as in redirection, especially if we are in the middle of having to do a redirection intervention. We really got to be aware of what our nonverbal communication is saying. So I mentioned earlier, 55% of communication is your body language. 38% of it's your tone of voice, just 7% of it is the words that we use. So it's how we're communicating is what's important, more important than the what. So they're going to pick up on that anxiety or that frustration or that impatience or that happiness and joy, and they'll generally mirror it. Don't try and argue or reason or overcorrect them, telling them that they're wrong over and over again, and it's really this. And using this validation, compassionate communication, active listening to help redirect them. And sometimes it might be that you use the words that they're using and mirror their emotion at the time, especially if they're frustrated, because this lets them know that they're being heard and what they're going through, the emotions in their world right now is very real, and we're going to validate that. An example I have is, I've seen this, Dad, you're coming in there and you come in and you're trying to get them to eat lunch. So you're making their lunch, you're doing this, you're serving it to them. Well, Dad, I can make my own damn lunch. You don't need to be in here and babying me all the damn time. Because we've never done this. This is not our role, right? So son, you're right. You can make your own lunch. I really just want to join you for lunch. Can we make and eat lunch together? That's a nice redirection without having to correct them. And it's also we're safe in the kitchen, making sure they're, not setting something on fire. but we're there and we're validating those emotions in that role and where they're at in their life. You know, some other things, you know, I'm so sorry that is frustrating. You know, you walking always makes me feel a little bit better. How about you and me go for a walk? You know, you go out for a walk, you're changing the environment, you're getting out of there, you're burning off some energy. It can help that way. And then if you need to say sorry for something you might be accused of, you know, I'm so sorry I made you feel that way. Please forgive me. I did not mean that. How about you and I? Let's go get some ice cream. We'll make it for it. You know, easy, kind of quick things like that. It's just talking about what are those nonverbal communication techniques. But using this environment, their sensory input is going to change, meaning how they're taking in what they're seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, tasting is going to change. It's going to be interpreted differently than you and I will interpret it. So they can easily misinterpret what's going on in the environment. And this can be that they're having hallucination. They just misinterpret something, like I mentioned earlier, they're trying to help them get in the shower, you help them get their clothes off, and now they think it's a sexual invite. You know, it's just misinterpreted, right? Or they could even be obsessed about something. So they're constantly checking the lock on the door, and they're constantly doing it, constantly doing it, constantly doing it. So it can be something like that, and it's that sensory input that they're interpreting it differently. Changing the environment will essentially kind of reset the brain, and they can forget whatever maybe they were obsessed about, or can forget something that maybe scared them in the other environment, or the hallucination can go away for the moment if you change the environment. And that can be anywhere from you go to another room in the house, you close the curtains. You know, there was a time my mom heard, she kept hearing something outside, and there wasn't anything outside, but it was starting to really agitate, kind of make her scared about what is that noise. I didn't hear what she was hearing. I didn't know what was going on, but you know what, let's just close the curtains and maybe you're not looking outside anymore. And we can kind of get this, whether it was an auditory hallucination, I'm not sure, or what, just misinterpreting what was going on. Maybe we can let that go away. We closed the curtains. I got her attention on one of her puzzles that she does, and it went away. So something small like that can really help. You also want to be aware of what is on the TV. How loud is the TV? Because they can see something on the TV and not realize that's a TV show, and that might be really happening in real life. I've had some people say there's somebody, they're trying to go leave. They're trying to meet formal obligations. They need to leave. They got to get out of here. I got to go pick up their kids. I got to go to work, whatever it is. Or they need to go home, and they might be at home, but they got to go home. They got to go home. And I've had several people say, so what we did is we hopped in the car and say, all right, let's go home. Let me drive you home. They drove around a couple of blocks and came back to the same house, and they were home. And it reset essentially their brain, and that was home for them then. You know, it's kind of a moment to moment thing. And again, just setting up the environment and to be preemptive or preventative, excuse me. Is it relaxing? Is it easy to manage? Let me sit here, look at the environment and hopefully the eyes of my loved one, and try and see what they're seeing. What can be helpful, what can be positive, what could possibly be misinterpreted, something like that. So therapeutic stories. Therapeutic stories, or fibs, you might have heard them called that, really are used to avoid increased agitation, anxiety, and fear. Their brains can interpret reality way differently than ours. They're regressed in time, they're not remembering, their sensory input's not working as well. So their reality, their version of reality is different from ours. So there's two things that we can do. We can either try and force them to our version of reality, what the real world is, and that can cause more confusion, more paranoia, more untrust, pain, fear, anger. Or we can step into their reality, what that current reality is for them, and use therapeutic stories to help them, spare them with any unnecessary emotional upset, distress, added confusion, frustration. And that really is the main goal of a therapeutic story. We you cannot force them into a different reality. You're not going to be able to reason them into what they're seeing or what their experience is not real, because to them it is very real, and you're not going to convince them otherwise. So really the best alternative for that is for us, because we are able to step into their reality and use some therapeutic stories. So dementia prevents people from really processing information well, and then holding on to information, retaining information. So by forcing them into our reality and trying to tell them the truth, it's really Sunday, or it's really Monday, it's not Sunday, we're not going to church, whatever it may be, we really can cause them more harm and distress, especially when the truth is going to be misunderstood, or it's going to be quickly forgotten because they really can't retain information either. So if necessary, you want to take care of it on the spot, fix it right then. And that can be you're pretending to make a phone call. You step outside for a minute to go speak to the neighbor, or whatever it might be that's necessary to help your loved one understand that you're able to fix it or get that job done right then and there. So an example, if they're looking for somebody from their past that has passed away, tell them that they're at the store, that they're golfing, they're out at the ranch, they're working late, whatever would have been something that was appropriate in the past or normal for them in the past, that's what we want to use here. If they think you're somebody else or another family member, another friend, most of the time it's just to go with it. Just try to tell them, no, I'm your daughter, I'm not your wife. Just go with it, be in the moment with them, right? If you're being accused of stealing their money, then you know what? Oh, we got to get this under control. Let me call the bank right now. You get on the phone, let me get the name, I'm going to get my name taken off the account. This will never, we're fixing this right now. You can call a friend, you can just call a relative, just call somebody and get it taken care of. That's done. My name's off the account, no access to any money of yours. Now let's go get some ice cream. So we got to go to their world, and we need to use what works best for them. And then the distractions, the food we go to, and Holly always says, the sweeter, the better of any kind of food, right? Animals, kids, music is huge. Music can be used as a preventative type measure, but also in the moment type measure too. Setting up the environment to nice. Activities, making sure you have activities placed around that we can grab easy, whether it's a pile of laundry, we got to fold this laundry, or we need to, we need to pull these weeds out here in this yard. We got stuff to do. That can be a distraction as well. We want to know their past. This is because we're going to, especially for therapeutic stories, we need to know what their past was from their either adult years, their young adult, teenage, childhood years. As they start to regress in time, I need to know those stories. Kind of, did they live on a ranch? Let me use this ranch. Oh, we got to get up there. I'm gonna go feed the cows. You want to come with me? Let's go for a walk. See if we can find those cows. Because that's what they're going to know. Having those sensory boxes or rummage doors or familiar chores or activities just kind of set up around the house in a safe way to where we can grab them easy. If I need to redirect them away from the door or from the car keys, hey, we're going to go in just a minute, but I need your help. We got to fold these clothes before we go. And you already have it kind of set up over here. Because now you don't have 30 minutes to get something together. It's kind of a quick, we're going to leave in a minute. You're right. We are going to leave. We're going to go do that. But first we got to get this done before we go. And then you get their thoughts on that activity, change the environment, moving on to something else. Reminiscing, having old photos handy, familiar, what's hanging on the wall, also sentimental items that you can have easily access. Use laughter if appropriate, right? We had my sweet almost father-in-law, he had a hard time. They had one of those clocks, for persons with dementia, is loud. It had the day on there. It kind of told you what time it was. It's Tuesday, it's 12 o'clock, all this stuff. It was helpful, but he got to a point where he was picking up that clock and he's like, it's not Tuesday. This clock is broken. And he would get really mad about it. it was Tuesday, but to him it wasn't. Why is this broken? First couple of times, well, no, Daddy, it is. This is the right time. This is the right time. Just set it down and don't worry about it. It's the right time. Don't worry about it. Well, he kept at it. It made him mad. It made him mad. So eventually I was like, you know what? Let's look at it. Look at this. This was made in China. I'll tell you what, items these days, we'll get it fixed. We'll get a new one, or we'll replace the batteries. You're right. We went where he was at, met him in his world. And we kind of laughed about it, made a joke about it. And that was appropriate to do for that. And then just being able to take a few deep breaths, especially if it's something upsetting to you or they're upset. Taking 3 deep breaths in a row can stop that cortisol dump for you. And it's going to give you a chance to respond with more creativity, with more positivity, and be able to manage the situation in the moment better. And know that any redirection technique that you use, you're helping your loved one continue the best way of life for them at that moment. If they can't be redirected, because there will become a time where you're just not going to be able to. And it's also to know if they're starting to ramp up, or it's just getting, my redirection efforts are not working. And it's getting worse and worse. They're escalating. Looking for those signs. They might clench their fist, heavy breathing, they're pacing back and forth, muttering to themselves, anything like that. Then we need to back off. Physically back off, and just wait a little bit. As long as they're safe, give them a moment to calm down. And then we reapproach. It gives us a moment to take our few deep breaths and find a different approach. And then we reapproach differently. Or it might be, it gives us a chance to bring somebody else in. We might need to, tag out and get somebody else in there to see a different place, a different face, or take them to a different part of the house. Again, changing that environment. Call somebody that's trusted to help you, if that's possible. But if there is they become physically combative, or it kind of looks like they're headed to that way, again, we want to make sure and give them their space, but they're in a safe, they're not going to pick up something and throw it at somebody. They're safe. Anyway, be patient. Just watch them, what they're going to do. Keep your hands by your side. Make sure that your body language doesn't look aggressive. And only have, if it's just you, if you can only have one person around to manage the situation, that helps. Or it's just that one person that does the talking. You don't need a lot of extra people there causing more confusion. And remember, this is a disease, it's not them. We always want to be kinder than what we feel. Watch that nonverbal communication, that active listening, compassionate communication, meeting them where they're at. We don't overreact. They might not make it a bigger deal than it is. Encourage and appreciate them continuously. You can always come back and try again later. And later might be 5 minutes, later might be 30 minutes. And join a support group because you're going to need to be able to take care of yourself and be able to talk some of these things through. Because there might just be a situation where you need to brainstorm with some experts that might be standing in your shoes that have already done this, or just have a different perspective on the whole thing than you do. So I didn't end 5 minutes early, but I want to, if anybody has any questions or wants to talk about anything specifically, please, now's the chance. Okay, well, we will send out the slides. So you have a copy of the slides and a copy of the recording as well, and then our upcoming programs too, and how to register for those. So, we appreciate it. Thank y'all so much.